Greetings and welcome to Flesh Wound Horror Live. I am Flesh Wound Dan, joined as always by producer Todd.
Good evening.
And our special guest this evening, Chris McGibbon. Chris, how are you doing?
From the Spooky Picture Show.
Thank you.
The Spooky Picture Show.
Appreciate the cross promotion there, Dan.
Fangoria author.
That was a while ago. We can stop saying that now. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Trying to put some magic on it for you, Chris. But how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, actually. I'm excited to talk about this because it's been a while. I don't know if we ever did a full. We've talked about it, but I don't know that we ever did a full Blair Witch show.
No, we've definitely talked about Blair Witch.
Yes.
I think we've had many arguments about it too.
It was the infamous last Creepshow Radio episode that we talked about Blair Witch.
Oh, okay. I don't think I was on that. I was.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, you were.
Oh, okay.
I'm a lot to deal with sometimes.
I wish I could say it was just you.
I'm glad you agreed to come on because I was wondering if you were going to remember that.
Of course I fucking do. I got the memory of a goddamn turtle. I remember everything. You're the one who doesn't remember shit.
Let's not make it Chris's last flesh wound feat.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still harboring some shit here, okay?
Well, you know what? You'll be happy to hear. I do enjoy it more now than I did. But we'll get into the rankings of them later.
Yeah, because I mean, opinions do vary over time, so I can't remember where you guys were on all of these movies. So, yeah, it should be interesting. But before we even get into the movies themselves, because I think whether you love Blair Witch, whether you hate it, or somewhere in between, nobody can deny what a cultural phenomenon it was. Back in 1999, this thing just comes along, and we'll get into this a lot throughout the show, but there was a significant amount of people that thought this was real. And not just kids. This wasn't something that just fooled kids. There were full-grown adults. I think we probably all have our stories with that. I've literally had grown men look at me at a yard sale because I was thumbing through and came across a Blair Witch, and it's like that's actually real. And it wasn't a joke. They weren't ribbing me. It was just like they thought that was real.
Was this in West Virginia?
No,
do they still think it's real there?
Washington State, Todd. So
no, well, they're not. Yeah.
So yeah, it was just one of these things that came out of nowhere. And whatever you thought about the movie, it was amazing that just this internet phenomenon that came along at a time when, look, 99, that's probably right around the time just about everybody had a computer at that point. But, there were some that still didn't. It was still a mysterious thing, the internet, to some people. And they came across that website and just thought this was real. And we'll talk a little bit about the phenomenon. But where were you in 1999, Chris, when this came out? What were your thoughts going into it? Take us back.
How old were you, Chris, when this came out?
I was 12.
12, wow.
I was 12 or 13. Well, it came out in October. Was it October that year?
No, July.
July. So I might have been 13.
Came out on home video in October.
Okay. I might have been 13. I was 12 or 13 because my birthday's in March. So I was born in 87. So what's the math there? Yeah, no, I was 12. Yeah, sure. Why not? Math's hard. But I remember this came out. I didn't see it in the theater because it wasn't something that either one of my parents would have taken me to go see. Everyone was talking about it. I remember looking up the website on our Mac computers in math class when we had free time at the end of the class. It was end of day kind of deal thing.
That makes sense. What's Chris looking at? Blair Witch website.
Well, everyone was talking about this movie, and I was a rabid young horror fan who, there was certainly nothing out there like this at the time, and there wasn't. I mean, my teachers were talking about it. My parents knew about it. It was the first time in my lifetime that I experienced a horror film that, for lack of, because the term didn't exist back then, but that frankly had gone viral, and everybody was all over the place. It was on MTV. It was on the news. It was on VH1, all these places that, at the time were known for not covering movies like this were talking about this movie. So of course,
Cover of every
know.
magazine on the newsstand.
Yeah.
I mean,
I wanted to know what this was about, and it wasn't until it came out on video that I finally saw it, and it was I was having a Halloween party, and I wasn't the most like popular kid in school because I was the weird kid who liked horror movies. So everyone just knew to stay away from me, except for in October. In October, I was everybody's friend. This year for my Halloween party, my big like claim to fame was we're gonna watch Blair Witch Project. And so of course, like kids I don't even know are trying to get into my birthday party, and I'm like, oh my god, on my Halloween party, I'm like, oh my god, this is great. I'm gonna be so popular when this is over because you're 12 and you're stupid. But I managed to like whittle down the list of people that could go, and kind of said, well, we can watch it again another night, or something like that. Because I was the only kid who had a copy, and so I had this tiny like 13-inch TV in a room that I would say generously was 5 by 5. I mean, this room was 10 by 10. It was a small room. Like 13, 14 of us crammed into this room. Like we just, sitting on the floor, sitting on my bed, sitting wherever people could sit. I think somebody was sitting on the bureau because there was just no room for anyone else. And by the time this thing was over, of the 15 kids, all 14 of them did not want to go home. They were all terrified. They all were like ready to call their parents and say like, we can't come out. Because where I lived was kind of, it was in the middle of nowhere, but there was woods around the house.
I was gonna say you were in a woodsy area.
They were afraid to go outside. It scared the crap out of everybody. And it was one of those movies where it definitely scared me as well, but it didn't scare me because I ever thought it was real. I had the common sense to know at 12 years old that a Hollywood studio is not going to release what essentially would be considered a snuff film to the major theaters and throughout the country. And I sort of pieced that together myself. So I was a little surprised when, as Dan said, grown adults believed it was real, and also were pretty upset when they found out that it wasn't.
No one likes to get worked. It's a thing.
They don't, and that's ultimately what I think was kind of the downfall for this movie, because it went from being the greatest horror film, scariest horror film ever made to, oh, that movie was bullshit. I hated it was so bored the entire time. It's like, yeah, because you know, a week ago it scared the shit out of you, but now you feel stupid because you thought it was real, so you're gonna, pretend like you didn't like it or it didn't bother you or whatever. But Blair Witch does something pretty amazing that even without the viral campaign, it still manages to be a pretty effective film because it relies heavily on the viewer's imagination to piece together what's going on. There's not like this monster or creature or person chasing after them that you ever see. It's all implied. Everything's suggested. That you only get glimpses of what might be going on and hearing things, and you're just as disoriented as the three kids in the movie are. You're just as confused. You're just as scared. And it really kind of brings that point home. And that type of guerrilla style filmmaking just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, this movie was on so many different levels, lightning in a bottle. I mean, the viral thing could have worked and the movie could have been garbage and it still would have worked. But it's actually a really great.
Some people say that is the case, though.
Well, yeah, because I think those are the people that are still mad 20 something years later.
See, I think it's interesting that because by the time it came out on video, I thought it was pretty much well known that it was a documentary. That it wasn't, that it was. I mean, because going back to the website told you it wasn't real. Like if you clicked around,
people don't read.
That's very true. No, that's 100% true.
Well, I think they also removed that at a certain point, which the Blair Witch doc talks about. But I mean, yeah, no, the amount of people that thought this was real was shocking. I'm much like Chris. I knew logically. I mean, I was reading film books at 12. Like, I was at least, I knew we weren't seeing people die in a theater. Like, that wasn't the case. So I had enough sense to know that, yeah, this was a gimmick. I was aware of, Mondo films at the time and everything. I was like, okay, so this is what they're doing. But nonetheless, man, like, we were all a part of this phenomenon. I joke about it, but like, what an experience that you could fool people with something like that. you know, we see little glimpses. The Megan is missing TikTok incident recently where they thought they were watching actual snuff footage. You know, but like nothing really compares to the Blair Witch phenomenon. And I don't think anything ever will again. This film is culturally very important. I understand why people love it. I also understand why people in some cases hate it, but this is a part of pop culture history. And every time I dive into it, which is not as often, it's not like a yearly watch for me or anything, but every time I dive into it, I find like the thing that I enjoy the most is the stories behind the movie, which I mean, actors were just given like a small, you know, basic outline of the plot mythology, which they thought was a real legend at the time, which it is not. And I, for me, when I was living in West Virginia, I would drive to a card game and go right past Burkittsville. So, like, I've actually been at like gas stations near there and asked people about this that live in Burkittsville, and they said like it was insane. You know, they said like people would come up to them and like just random people, and it's like I never heard about anything until, you know, 99 when the movie came out. And just the amount of people flooding in from all over the world into Burkittsville, which is not quite as remote as people make it out to be. It is near civilization, but
And they say the area they filmed in is a tiny state park too. It's not like giant like you're led to believe, but I mean, that's movie making.
You go there, actually go there, you can kind of see where some of the bullshit comes in. But yeah, no, this guy was like, yeah, he's like, he was still working at the place back then, and he's like, we sold like insane amounts of beer to just these out of towners that were coming in thinking like they were going to actually, like, in some cases, catch the Blair Witch. I remember a very vivid story where I was talking to this guy where they had, which to me doesn't make sense. If you believe it's real, how are you going to catch the Blair Witch? But they had a fucking like dog cage, like giant dog cage in the back of
they must have saw the action figure and that's what they were looking for.
I don't right. And this was a real thing, and he was telling me, he's like, but it's a ghost, right? It's just gonna like go through. He's like, well, no, like like, I don't know, but they actually drove from whatever city.
That's why they were buying the beer, Dan. They weren't the
right. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the cage was for other purposes. But that is amazing to me. No other movie I think has ever done this. I mean, you know, you have people that think certain movies were cursed or haunted, but what a time.
Actors might think this movie was cursed.
Yeah.
So much so that Heather Donahue changed her name.
Yeah. Wow. Can you imagine actually your family's getting sympathy cards because they think you're dead? Like, holy crap.
Well, the same thing happened with Cannibal Holocaust back in the day too, on a much smaller scale. But didn't the director have to go to court to prove that the actors hadn't been actually murdered and that like they were in hiding for a year or something like that? And he said, you got to come out and come to court, and because they think I killed you. And
Rosario Dadato, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember hearing that story. It was a much smaller scale, of course, like back then, and you know, I mean, I think things like that, you know, didn't quite get over here the way that, I mean, the internet is what got Blair Witch into people's psyche and homes and, you know, peripherals back then, and it was very much this was very much in the infancy of the internet, and this was the first time a movie had really taken advantage of marketing on the internet, right? And now all of a sudden, like, we can't even fathom what the world would be like if we didn't use the internet to market a film. You know, and that's Blair Witch started all that. And, you know, the other thing about Blair Witch too is that, you know, you have this movie where these three people are put in the situation, like you said, they were given kind of a rough outline of what they were going to be doing, but they weren't really told what exactly they needed to be doing. So everything in this movie is pretty much ad-libbed, and everything is pretty much just done on the fly. And there is some genuine terror in this film that these actors express that other seasoned actors with scripts and directors that are pure, you know, pouring emotion and intensity into the roles, you know, don't manage to capture. I don't think people give these three enough credit for just doing such a believably amazing job of being scared. It's a hard thing to do and to keep on. It's a really difficult headspace to be in for as long as they were. Like there could have been a number of times where these guys could have said, that's it, enough, we're done, this is too much, like this is not what we signed up for. They didn't. They just kept going. And, you know, I mean, hats off to all three of them for really just delivering what I think are three of the best performances we've ever seen in a horror film in many years, you know, and still since then. I really just think like they were phenomenal in the movie, and that's what made it work so well. That's what sold it so well, you know. I mean, everybody in this movie really seemed to be like on their A game, like even like the random, you know, people they interview that aren't actors either. They're just people they found in the town and said, hey, you want to do this quick thing? We're making a fake documentary about something called the Blair Witch. You want to make up a story? But sure, why not?
I don't think they told them all that it was fake, because some of them they're just going randomly talking to.
The lady with the kid who famously is like trying to cover her mouth apparently like made up all of her shit on the spot.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing, you know, and these actors, they don't know. I mean, they're suspicious. The Blair Witch doc, which is on the second site release, has a lot of footage of them behind the scenes, you know, talking to each other. Like they didn't know sometimes. It's like, is that waitress a plant? What's going on here?
Yeah, the cast didn't know who the plants were. Like,
yeah,
they have like the plants to be able to, you know, give some exposition and kind of move the plot along. So they were like going out to ask like everyone different questions. So some people like, what's the Blair Witch? And other people would go along with it. And then they'd get to the one that would give them the information they needed that would help, you know, drive the story and so they could treat it as a documentary, and it just made it actually makes me respect it a lot more the way they did it.
Yeah. I guess that was my point, is like, you can't tell the difference between the plants and the actors, the people who weren't acting and just kind of running with it or not having any fucking clue.
And you know what's also, you mentioned the actors and they don't get put over enough. This was not a movie where there was any aspiration or intent that this was going to be theatrical. That just kind of happened through you know, the phenomenon that it became. Like, these actors were just working on something that they probably figured, you know, maybe it'll get a VHS release, some people will see it and it'll be forgotten, most likely. They busted their asses. There were times where they had to go to sleep in sleeping bags which had water in it because they were, you know, just walking through creeks and everything. And it was a miserable 8 days in a lot of ways, and that comes across on camera. It's very authentic. We've talked in the past, like, there's nothing worse than a found footage movie where it just feels fake and you can tell they're acting and it's just, you're not into it at all. If these were lesser actors, this movie would be garbage.
All it takes is one bad actor in a found footage movie. That's all it takes. The minute you've got somebody who talks like this and doesn't know how to emote, the whole thing falls apart. And it becomes, okay, this is fake. Like no person has that sort of, like, unless it's like a character trait or something like that, you know, like they're trying to put, you know, that's what they're trying to kind of pass across. But, you know, there was one that we watched forever ago. It was like a ghost one where they were shooting a ghost episode, and like the former site of John Wayne Gacy's house. And these paranormal investigators go into like the house that's built there now, and the ghost of, you know, John Wayne Gacy starts killing them one by one, and everyone in the movie was terrible. Like, from start to finish, these people were all bad, and it's just like, this isn't working at all. Like, you're not, like, you know, if you have one bad actor, it's bad, but if you have multiple bad actors, it's even worse.
That sounds like the Asylum masterpiece you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know what it was called, but then there's shit like Grave Encounters that has a really great cast, and of course Blair Witch, and you know, if you get those really solid actors that are great at ad-libbing, and I think that's the key, is you need to get actors that are really good at thinking on their feet and just running with whatever's going on and just not getting out of that moment and just taking it and rolling with it. You'll get something pretty amazing with found footage, and Blair Witch is a testament to that. And people often ask me like, what's the scariest movie you've ever seen? And I 9 times out of 10, I'll say Blair Witch, and they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, that movie, I still watch that movie. I've seen it, many times since it came out. And when they get into that house and they're screaming for Josh and they're going into that basement, I still like the hairs in the back of my neck stand up. I get goosebumps on my arms. And that last shot of Mike up against the wall and her screaming and the camera just going down, it's just like, ugh. In a dark room, like that movie will still make me turn the lights back on for a little while. So I'm, I really do think it is one of the scariest horror films ever made, period. And probably the scariest, in my opinion, that I've seen. So
it's also something that I think if you have like an old small TV, like to watch it on that, and if you still have the videotape, even better, to experience it that way is unique.
There we go.
There you go. And again, what's really ironic about this movie, and again, it speaks to the fact that this was not meant to be the theatrical phenomenon that it became. They put up poster ads at a local college for help on the movie, and only one person answered it, and it was Patricia DeCoux, who had passed away a while ago, who ended up playing Mary Brown, the older lady that they actually go into her house and ramshackle house, and she ended up working in the art department. This is just some lady that saw an ad it on a billboard at a local college with lost pet papers, and she became a part of pop culture history. I think that's just really cool. And it was such a small production and I highly recommend the Blair Witch documentary,
which is available on the second site release.
Yeah. There was a point where one guy got screamed at by a producer for spending $9 on twine. Like that was a thing because they didn't have a whole lot of money. They returned a camera to Circuit City so that they could get the money back that they shot it on. You can only imagine if you had that camera at this point, but
someone does or did and didn't even know it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No clue. Maybe
if they were smart, they left the tape in there.
That would imagine. Oh my god, that would have been fucking cool if you bought the camera and there's that. I mean, like somebody would have. Like, oh my fucking god! But how cool would that have been?
There's this story, and they brought it up in the Blair Witch documentary of when they were forced to transfer it to film for Sundance. That the transfer house that did it, somehow all of a sudden all these copies flooded LA into industry people.
Yeah.
So someone thought it was funny to do it and start showing people, telling them it was real. So it became an LA industry-wide thing that people knew about the movie because of
they branched out. Yeah.
And just like and that, is going to help it get some buzz. So there was already a buzz like before it even like hit Sundance because of that.
And so much of the stuff that they didn't do, because obviously a lot of people in 1999 go to the theater and it's like that didn't believe it was real, and it's like, this isn't a movie, where's the special effects? And it's like, imagine if they did have some goofy special effects shot of the Blair Witch, and this was all stuff that was discussed. You see like the pitch meetings in this doc,
and they're talking about if they're going to do it or not.
Yeah, at one point the camera was supposed to turn and you were going to get a glimpse of a guy dressed in white to make it look like a ghost, and that he didn't turn the camera that way, if I recall. And like
wasn't he wearing like a reflective white suit, so like when the light hit it, he looked like he was glowing or something like that? I remember hearing that.
Yeah, so it would have been like a lightsaber that just that camera reflect.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And I don't know that. I think it's actually better that it wasn't there. Like
I am a full believer that seeing anything in this movie would have taken it down a notch for sure. Because again, it's all about what the mind pieces together. It's like that suggestive violence in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Everyone screams that Leatherface puts the hook into the girl, and you get to see the hook go right in. And they'd argue with Gunnar Hansen about it. Like, no, like you see the hook go into her back, and he's like, we didn't shoot that. Like, we didn't have the money for that kind of an effect. It's not in the movie. Your mind put it together and pieced it in there, but it's never been in there before. You know, and Blair Witch is a lot of the same, you know, where it uses the power of suggestion and kind of like what you don't see to give you more than what you could see if they showed it on screen. And we can talk about that a little bit later, but the third film is a prime example of what happens when you do that, when you show the audience something versus just saying, hey, let's just make this a suggestion, or, you know, not give anything away. Let's not show the monster or the ghost or whatever it was. But yeah, that's we'll save that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into where the franchise could go going forward and the sequels and everything. I think that'll be interesting. But yeah.
The one thing I did want to say, like for me, like Blair Witch is a film, it's cool. I'm okay with it, but I think it's the whole experience. It was that made it what it was. It was the website. It was the sci-fi special going in, which we'll touch a little bit more. Curse of the Blair Witch. It was like everything going in that like made it all work. It was the hype. It was the buzz. I think it almost made it better than it was. And yeah, sorry, Kruger just chimed in, so I'll pull this one up.
The Blair Witch Project was a movie that freaked me out when I was a kid, but as time has gone on, rewatch has made it less effective. I do enjoy the director's other found footage film Exists a lot, though. Oh, yeah, great. I forgot that he did that. The
big one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is good.
But yeah, like there's so much that went into this. I think that that elevates the film. Like everything else that made it just like, I remember being in the theater and like the buzz on opening night and packed theater. And that's when you actually had to sit there and wait for the movie to start. You weren't staring at your phone. So people were talking. There was an electricity.
I'm sorry. There was an electricity in the audience. I thought you just said there wasn't electricity. I'm like, then how the fuck did y'all watch the movie?
No,
was it reenacted with shadow puppets?
It's funny. They touched base in the doc that it was like they had to add so many screens, and this is back in the day on film. So they were like taking the film and theater to theater. So it was playing in multiple screens off one print, getting woven into the next projector, into the next one. And it like they were canceling screenings to get more screenings of it. It was there was a lot. Yeah, this is like a moment that I don't think could be recreated. I know people like to say Paranormal Activity. Yeah, it did something similar.
Different, though. Yeah,
it's not the level that Blair Witch was.
Paranormal
it's not a cultural phenomenon.
It's not. And Paranormal Activity also had the unfortunate fate of coming after Blair Witch. Anything after Blair Witch was never going to be. It's like The Exorcist. Like every horror movie, every possession movie after The Exorcist is never going to be The Exorcist. They all try to be. They all like make an effort to be. They do a lot of the same shit. They all incorporate a lot of the same elements and bring a lot of the same shit to the table, but they don't get to that level. And that's, you know, I think Paranormal Activity is a great found footage film. It's another one of the ones that I think is genuinely scary and very effective. I'm not too crazy about the ending. I think that's one of those instances where I really wish they hadn't listened to Steven Spielberg, but you know, whatever.
Steven Spielberg. It's hard.
Isn't it ironic though that it was Blair Witch had all the parodies and everything, but Blair Witch didn't really launch that like nonstop wave of found footage that Paranormal Activity did. You had so much come out.
Well, there's the difference. The technology was the difference. That's the only thing.
I also think too, like Blair Witch did jumpstart a slew of major studios picking up no budget movies. There was this huge uptick in that where we were getting stuff that I don't think a company like Artisan or Sony would have touched before, but they all thought, well, this movie only cost $100,000 to make, we can buy it for that. And then, you know, we, you know, make millions because Blair Witch, you know, they kind of started to have this concept that they didn't need a $1 million horror movie to sell units, and they could kind of, you know, finagle that. I do remember there being a lot more what seemed like lower budget films. Like there was that weird period where Lionsgate just every other week I think was just putting out some weird direct-to-video
Oh yes, those
Yulie
awesome.
Lamel horror movie or something like that. You know, and I think that stemmed from the success of Blair Witch, because, you know, Blair Witch was this ultra low budget film, and you know, and they realized you could make a buck off of something like that. It didn't have to be polished and perfect for it to make money. But that did kind of quickly fade away, because again, like lightning in a bottle, you know, was Blair Witch, and they realized, oh, this isn't every low budget horror movie that can do this. It's just that one managed to do it, and people kind of see through the bullshit pretty quickly. So,
and they did turn on this one pretty quick. It did. The cycle was, it went love, then it turned at the end just in time for Blair Witch 2, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
You had a lot of that. I knew it was fake all along kind of reactions, which usually are the people that bought it.
They got worked. Yeah. No, I remember. Yeah. It's like one of those cases, being in the theater, and I was like, you could tell like there was like people that did still think it was, because by the time because it broke like as a news story, like days before the film hit the act, like they were breaking some big secret, but it didn't matter. It was, yeah, I can't remember. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks after the film was when they started trotting out the actors.
I think so. I thought I recalled it being a little later on my end, but I don't remember. But I do remember them going on the MTV Movie Awards.
Yeah. And
that's when everyone realized, oh, this wasn't real. Like, you even saw people in the audience kind of going like, what are they doing here? Like, you know, like they almost seem like, I mean, they fooled a lot of people. And I've said it a million times. I wrote an article about it forever and a day ago on All Things Zombie. It was a message board that I think is still around, but that was, you know, my social media back then. And I wrote this big long piece on how the Blair Witch is so kind of universally hated now, because people don't like to be made to feel stupid, and they all felt stupid because they thought it was real, and they were telling everybody else it was real, and the ones that didn't believe them were probably going, see, I told you were a fucking idiot, this wasn't real, you know. And
who doesn't like to be right?
You know, I mean,
I'll confess some jealousy. Like, I wish I could be duped. Like,
I get that. I wish I get that. I like to get like, okay, I immerse me in this world. I kind of wish I wouldn't have known going in and just been able to absorb it like everyone else. But it didn't matter. I mean, like it was the world, but like I'll say this now. I'm not the biggest Blair Witch fan. I don't hate it by any means, but I love Curse of the Blair Witch. I love that. It is perfect. It leads into this movie. It makes this movie better in my eyes. I've always been a huge Curse of Blair Witch fan, but I mean, I'm a huge Unsolved Mysteries fan, and that's basically the format. But I'm curious, because the original plan, all that footage from Curse of the Blair Witch was meant for the feature, because the original format was more of a Unsolved Mysteries with all these interviews and then clips of the footage that is the movie. So it was going to go back and forth, and I think it would have played more like a documentary. I don't think it would have been as effective, but I do think as a film I would have liked it done better that way. But I loved Curse of the Blair Witch, so I still have all the footage. It's just, it would have been a different movie and a different experience. I think they made the right call because it did become the cultural phenomenon. But if they would have gone the other way, maybe it would have made the 10 to 30 million, and maybe they would have had a career after that, to be honest.
I did want to address one thing, because like Heather Donahue famously got a Razzie for Worst Actress. And I think that was kind of bullshit, because a lot of people going into that, and you can kind of deconstruct this when you ask people and break down why they feel the way they feel. And again, Blair Witch is nowhere near my favorite movie either, but you know, I do recognize why it works. A lot of people look at like Heather Donahue in that movie, and they would have expected a more traditional Hollywood portrayal that you would have seen from you know, a younger Sigourney Weaver or something. It's like she's supposed to be like a real girl that you would just meet out there. I mean, it's a little unglamorous. Yeah, we see snot coming out of her nose, as it would be. And
She committed. That's the whole thing.
Yeah,
she was there, and
there's no love storyline. That would just kill the movie.
Slasher video asks, she grows weed now, doesn't she? Yes, she does. She is now a weed farmer.
She's also a politician too, isn't she?
Yeah, locally. I
think she's I think she's like a senator or something in Maine, or like a city council woman.
It's a council thing. It's not senator, but something like that. Yeah.
I don't pay attention to anyone's
her name now is Ray Hance.
Yeah.
R-E-I Hance. So
yeah.
Hance? Is that her? Okay. But at least she doesn't get all the Blair Witch stuff now, I guess.
Well, she goes to conventions and stuff because they just had her at New Jersey HorrorCon just this past April, I think. And she was on a panel with Mike and Josh, and they had a great time reminiscing. And I like that when you see those three together, because you can tell like those 8 days were a huge bonding experience that that have really made them very close when they're in the same room. I don't think they're calling each other once a week or anything like that, but there's definitely some kind of an energy that comes from when those three are together, and you can sort of feel it.
It's like they went to war together. They have the lifelong bond from that 8 days. I mean,
I really wish and hope. I know there's still things going on with them trying to get kind of what they're owed. And I know the filmmakers who made the movie are in support of that. They're behind them 100%. It's really just getting the studio, to kind of cave and throw out the dollars that they're owed and deserve. Frankly, I really hope that they get that, because they, of what they went through. And I mean, really, they're the moving force in this film. They're the only thing that keeps it going,
Oh, absolutely. And I did have the pleasure of meeting them, and they're back there on the wall there. But I remember talking to Joshua Leonard in particular. The other two, Heather and Michael, were nice, but Joshua Leonard, and I always tell people at a convention, talk about Blair Witch if you want. All three of them are nice. They'll talk to you about it. But I brought up like Madhouse and Quid Pro Quo, because Joshua Leonard's got a lot of other credits, and it's like, thank you for like bringing up something else. I need the break once in a while. But no, they all super nice, and it's a shame with something that makes this kind of money that it
happens sometimes. It destroys your career. Like it's brought up in the documentary. Like if they would have made the 10 to 30 that they were expecting, that it would have been better for their careers in the long run.
Yeah, but they're still around. Actually, I think Michael is back to doing stuff because he kind of dropped out.
He was, I believe, he was teaching for a long time. He was teaching acting. Ironically, I got to meet him. He's the only one of the cast that I got to meet in person.
Okay.
And I told him that he was one of my first crushes when I was a kid. And he goes, "Well, who's one of your crushes now?" I said, "I mean, you, but you're married and straight. So like, what am I going to do with it?" He's like, "I'm just making sure. Like, I just want to make sure I didn't fall off the rungs." I said, "Nope, you didn't, but you're also like unavailable. So if that changes, you know where to find me." But super, super nice guy. Like, I mean, really, I think it was just him. There was nobody else there. I don't know why they just
wrote his number on the back of your 8x10. You just
I honestly, I was so he caught me off guard because I met him with my buddy Matt Blasi, and I was wearing a Night of the Demons t-shirt that I actually had made last time I was with Todd when we had the 30th anniversary screening, and it just has the title on the front and then the tagline on the back. I loved that shirt. That shirt lasted for a long time. But he had no clue he's like, "What's Night of the Demons?" I've never even, that's a new one. So of course I had to explain that to him.
So then he had to hear for like an hour and a half.
Yeah. So I wasn't even thinking about getting his autograph at that point. I was like, "Oh my God, I got to tell you all about this really cheesy 80s horror movie that I love so much." And then by the time, we kind of parted ways, it dawned on me, I didn't think to go, "Oh man, I actually got something signed," and I hope I get to bump into them again in another show.
They do a lot, so you probably will.
They do, but they don't do them out this way. And it's not, and by the time, it's weird, by the time I always find out where they're going to be, it's like that weekend something else. Like that weekend they were in New Jersey, I was doing Monster Expo out here, and I've been begging that them to bring Blair Witch, the Blair Witch cast to Monster Expo for a show, but we just haven't done it yet. So if that happens, then I'll be very happy.
Here's a solution, Chris. I'll be your wingman for Michael. You be my wingman for Heather.
Absolutely not.
We'll make it happen.
No, I'm not doing that. I am not doing that to that poor woman. And I no.
She could be Miss Hatman. That would be awesome.
Yep. No, it's not.
I just want to see Dan get lost in the weed field. No one's ever going to find him.
That's probably what she would do. She probably would drop him off in the middle of the woods somewhere with a little.
Well, now I want Blair Witch in the weed farm. Damn it! Someone started growing weed. There's the sequel. She survived, and now she's growing weed in Burkittsville.
That's where everybody is. They just discovered the magic weed. But you did bring up Curse of the Blair Witch, which really adds a lot. Like, I don't know if anybody's watching this that has never watched the Blair Witch movies, but where do you recommend you start? Do you watch Curse of the Blair Witch first, you think?
It sets everything up. I am 100% behind. Start, if you've never seen it and don't know anything, watch Curse. It's on, if you get the Blu-ray, whichever version, whatever country, it's going to have Curse on there. The Artisan one does, or sorry, the Lionsgate one does. I mean, and all the other imports I know of do include it. It's definitely, it sets up, it just gives you that, like, it fills you in.
The Ellie Kedward legend, which is really cool. And it's a shame to me that we haven't had some prequels, because of all things, this really makes sense that you would have some prequels, because there's two distinct stories set up, which we'll get into more. But just speaking to Ellie Kedward in the Curse of Blair Witch, I mean, this is 45 minutes, and I think there's going to be some people that hate Blair Witch no matter what, but I do think watching this first will really kind of get you into that mood a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I like this better than the actual film. Like, I love, but again, I'm unsolved mysteries, true crime, stuff like that, and it's that format, and I do. It really does enhance the Blair Witch Project.
No, absolutely. And Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of, and
that was the inspiration.
I was going to say, it did inspire the filmmakers, and
that was the format they were going to do. That basically got split into the Curse of the Blair Witch and the Blair Witch Project.
It is weird because again, and when you watch that doc, so much of it, I mean, you wouldn't have what you had without a lot of hard work, obviously, but just certain decisions that could have sent this in a totally different direction that probably never would have ended up in the massive hit that we got. And what an interesting way to close out the 90s too, because this was it really didn't set the stage so much as, like I said, you didn't get the massive amount of found footage films, like especially in theaters, that thought they could be the next Blair Witch. But
before we move on from the Blair Witch Project, the first one, we should talk about, because I know me and Dan, I know Chris, you've seen it, the extended sight cut. That is the 3-hour cut.
Oh God.
of Blair Witch. Now, I feel like this is more for you than it would be for me, because you love the film.
I do. I do. There are some decisions that I respect. And this was one of them. I had heard many stories about the infamous 3-hour cut of Blair Witch, the first version that was ever assembled together.
The first version was actually only 2.5, so this is actually longer.
Oh, okay. So I guess I had heard incorrectly. But I you hear about these things for, then you see the director teasing that he's got all these tapes that he found, and it's all this, what could we be up to? And you're thinking, they're putting that, because everyone's asking for it. Like, the fans are all going, can we have the longer cut, please? And their big claim on that is, we only ever made one version of that cut, and we don't know where it is. So they keep teasing with all this footage that they're finding, like, maybe they're just putting it back together. And they didn't officially, but someone did. Someone went out and put that, the 3-hour version. And I watched it and thought, okay, this certainly gets you more involved. There's some pieces of it that I wouldn't have minded if they kept them in. There's a lot that I'm like, yeah, I get why you took this out, because there's a point where like it really makes the 3 kids pretty intolerable, and you don't like any of them by the time the movie's over in that version, because they are just, there's a lot of yelling and screaming. There's
but real.
It's real, but it happens so frequently that
there's a lot of bickering. It doesn't help Heather.
No, it happens again and again and again, and it feels like you're trapped in like a car with the most annoying sibling in the world, and you can't like do anything about it, and your parents aren't telling them to shut up, and you just have to sit there and listen to them nag and nag and nag. And so I certainly get why they took a lot of that out and they kind of trimmed it down, because I mean, even as it is now, like there's still some, there's bickering that people don't like, and if that was longer, there was more of it, it would have certainly made it harder to feel anything for these characters as they're being sort of knocked off, or getting more and more scared.
Go with the festival cut, which I think is now considered the dominant.
That's the definitive one. Yeah,
it's an hour 25 versus the hour 21. So you're not, that's generally kind of like, I guess, the version to watch.
Yeah, that's the one that as the title says, the festival cut, before Artisan clipped it up a little more. For me, watching the extended site cut, it made it more immersive. I do agree, it makes it the characters more unlikable. It's definitely not one that I'd recommend to like watch, as Dan said. It is a curiosity piece, and if you're a big fan of I think getting more of it, like anything, like if you're a big fan of something, to see more of it's always a good thing. I definitely think it's worth checking out.
Not as your first time watch, though.
No, definitely not.
No,
like I said, this is if you're a fan of it already, then definitely.
And I honestly can't picture I would be genuinely shocked if somebody had never seen Blair Witch and decided, I'm going to go with the longest version possible.
Sometimes people like to do that. Like sometimes like the longest one's the best one. Not always.
Yeah.
And this is a case where there's more footage in the 3-hour cut that's in the actual movie. It's more than double of extra footage.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And there was a lot of bickering. And
you could essentially cut together a whole other version of the movie and cut the stuff that's in the movie out. You know what I mean? Like you could effectively take out a lot of what's in the release version and use the other hour and a half of footage to make a whole new version. Just, even use the whole, because there were a couple different endings and our versions of the ending. And oh my God, thank God they went with the one that they did, because any of the other ones I was like, yeah, this would have killed this movie like right away. The one with him like perched up on the stick man figure in the basement, like I saw that and I was like, I know you were just kind of doing whatever at that point, and you were just gonna, different ideas just to get what you could get, see what worked and what didn't. But my God, they had to know that wasn't working. Like when they were doing it, like that looks terrible. I mean, nothing beats him standing in the corner. The story of Rustin Parr, and he made one kid face the corner while he killed the other one. So you knew right then and there, she's not getting out of this, and she don't even see what hits her, but something hits her and she hits the ground. The camera's stuttering and it's just nothing, and you're just sitting there like, what? But if she had gone down there and saw fucking him hanging from a goddamn giant stick man, you would have been like, now how did someone have time to do that? Like it would have just took you right out of it. And I'm so glad they didn't use that.
Yeah. But on this one, I guess let's rate it. I'm curious where everyone actually lies number-wise. I think, Chris, I'm going to let you go first. I know you're going to be the highest of us. I feel like you're a 5, are you?
It is a 5. I mean, like I said, it's a movie that that I still stand by as genuinely one of the scariest horror films I've ever seen. It's not the scariest, but it is one of them. And it's up there with me with like something like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that it's ageless. It works no matter when you see it or how you see it. This is a movie that, I've had my young nieces and nephews want to watch, and I've told them no. It's one of the very few that I'm like, no, this isn't one that's for you yet. You got to wait till you're a little bit older to see this, just because I'm like, it's one that I could see turning a younger audience if they're really sensitive or they're or anything like that, or too young. This could turn them off of horror because it could scare them so much that they never want to watch another horror movie again. And the horror genre for me is so important, and so to keep it alive and keep people enjoying it, I want them to have fun with it before it scares the ever loving crap out of them. I know that can be fun for them too, but my brother's friends showed my nephew Paranormal Activity, ironically, and he didn't sleep for 3 weeks, and he refused to come anywhere near my bedroom or my movie room downstairs, 2 places that he loved to be in. All of a sudden were the scariest places in the world to him. And I felt awful because I'm like, I loved watching horror movies with him. We watched all the fun stuff, and he had a good time, and told his friends that he got to meet one of the guys who played Jason Voorhees, and now he's terrified of all that stuff. And he isn't now, but for like weeks he was. It took him a while to come back around. So I really do. There are certain films I'm like, no, there's a time and place for you to experience this one. And at a young age, Blair Witch is not one of them. But 14, 15, yeah, go for it, but anything younger than that, I think you're risking maybe putting your young one over the edge. But there's not a lot of horror films that I say that about. So
I'm not a 5, I'm a 4, but I've definitely grown on this movie because I've talked about it before. Mid to late 90s was a weird time because it wasn't my favorite era of horror, and I didn't connect with it at first. I really kind of connected more with the phenomenon, but watching it again, like if you're in the right frame of mind, again, you really let yourself be immersed in it, turn the lights out. I think it is a special film, and it's a very unique film at that time. It's going to play a lot of different ways for different people, but there's no denying. I mean, this was a point in time that if you were around for it, you'll never forget.
Yeah. And I'm actually a 4 also. It is one that I'm kind of with Dan on. Like I've never loved it, but it is just such a well-made film, and everything going into it, the thought process, it just works. I mean, definitely watch Curse before though. I think it really helps it. But yeah, I'm a 4 also. Before we just jump straight into Book of Shadows, we should kind of just talk about the, art. I keep wanting to say Lionsgate, but Artisan at the time was going to make a sequel no matter what. Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about that before we go into?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so Artisan, they wanted it now. Like the entire so Joe Berlinger, who of course ended up being the director for Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, he was there pitching some other movie, and they ended up obviously offering him this, and he had 9 months. He had to be done in 9 months. Shoot it, get it out in theaters in time to sort of hopefully blow up the box office again. I feel bad for Joe Berlinger. I mean, before we get into the movie at all,
but before we get into the movie, I do want to touch upon the specials before on this one. So I just want to talk about how this movie got started.
Well, simple. It made an ungodly amount of money, and
we didn't even talk about the box office on the first one. It broke 30 million the first weekend. What did it end up total? 280 million, I want to say.
It was one of the most
worldwide
profitable movies, because again, it's almost pure profit. One of the most profitable movies ever. I think it's up there with like Passion of the Christ, where it made ridiculous profits. And who would have thought? And there's a little bit of that in the Blair Witch doc too, where they made funny bets with each other. It's like, even when they knew they had a theatrical, it's like, oh, maybe if this makes 30 million, like I'll buy you a beer kind of stuff. And it's like
the bet with Artisan was 30 million. If it makes 30 million, we want to.
Was it a ping pong table?
No, it was a professional grade foosball table.
Foosball table. Okay. Yeah.
And it made 30 million that opening opening weekend.
And adjusted for inflation, yeah, even more insane. But so Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, which I don't really remember all
no.
your opinions.
Remember, we're gonna go back.
Okay, I forget where this.
Yeah, no. Now we're gonna hit the specials first. Burkittsville 7.
There you go. Sorry about that.
So we can just talk about this.
All right.
Well, it's hard not to talk about the Blair Witch movie first before Curse, but this one we'll
I'll get more into the behind the scenes on where they kind of, well, I'll save it. But Burkittsville 7. So this is the Showtime original that was to capitalize on the movie once again. And this was the Rustin Parr story, which again, maybe one day they'll actually do it, but Rustin.
But we have this for now. I love the world building, but it feels like you want more payoff on some of these.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the Burkittsville 7 special is that they kind of imply like Rustin Parr may not have really been the mastermind of this. It might have been the sole survivor, Kyle Brody. I do think this particular special, you can tell they put a little more into it versus Curse. Not that I
don't know if it's put more into it. I think this was more like a decision where the first one was almost cobbled out of footage. This one they know what they're making, so they're making it specifically, and I think it plays different.
It does, and it's very good. If you've never watched Burkittsville 7, again, 40 some odd minutes, so it won't take you a long time to watch it. And it's for those of you familiar with the Titicut Follies,
they do their mockumentary.
It's kind of that, and it's very disturbing, very interesting, and it does really add to the lore quite a bit. And I feel like this should be a movie, and I don't understand how they never did it. But I guess again, period pieces, and at that time, just coming out of the 90s, they didn't think that would ever like sell. They need a young hip cast, which factors into Book of Shadows, which we'll get into. But
I love all these documentaries, some more than the movies, some as much as the movies. You can find, I know this one and Shadow of the Blair Witch are both on YouTube also. Maybe I'll drop the link too. But I recommend this one if you haven't seen it. And then this is one I didn't see till I got the tape. I didn't know it was a Showtime thing. I actually saw Book of Shadows before the Burkittsville 7 movie. Okay. But Shadow, I saw that one was still a Sci-Fi special. We'll just pivot right over to Shadow.
Yes. Shadow of the Blair Witch, which this was also, again, as you said, sci-fi, and it was shot at the same time as Blair Witch 2, and this kind of gets into Jeff Patterson, the lead character in Book of Shadows. And I enjoyed this one. They kind of run down cult of personality type stuff. Marshall Applewhite, the infamous leader of the Heaven's Gate cult, and some of the family members that were trying to block this sequel from getting made. Mass hysteria theory. It's interesting. It might be my least favorite of the specials, but
I like it sets up. But I think the other two are like Burkittsville 7 is the perfect one on this one. And I agree.
This one's kind of like, you're okay if you don't see it, and it's tough because like at this point, like they're trying to capture that same magic of people thinking it's real, and the cat was long out of the bag, although there were people years later that were still thinking it was real. So who knows? But I guess we can get into Book of Shadows. But before we do, again, just leading up to it had 9 months and a lot of studio interference. Artisan didn't like Joe Berlinger's cut of the movie, and they had him reshoot scenes to add more conventional commercial horror elements. The director was always quoted as saying that they kind of killed the mysterious, ambiguous tone of the plot with the changes that they wanted to make. For example, I know Artisan made him swap the opening Sinatra song Witchcraft with Marilyn Manson's Disposable Teens. Great song. It was in a lot of horror movies at the time. And he really had kind of an awful experience. I mean, his idea was exploring fanaticism in the media or violence in the media and how that drove fanaticism. And obviously Artisan, I don't think, got the vision, and they made him change a lot of different things. There is a director's cut out there though that I do urge you to see.
It's a restoration. The official title,
Yeah.
which is in the link that I did drop also with the 3-hour
Okay.
Blair Witch. It's listed as the Artisan removal cut, but it's essentially a director's cut restoration, putting stuff back in the order, going close to the original script, and restoring the music. It's unofficial, obviously, but it's as close as we'll ever get to the. And as JG Michaels just said, Blair Witch 2 rules, especially the Artisan removal fan edit, which is the one where
Can I upset people now though? Because I don't think this movie's very good.
Oh my god, I love Blair Witch 2.
It's not,
it has the most successful actor out of all of them now.
Jeffrey Donovan did go on to become a pretty big star, especially in TV. He was the Burn Notice guy, right?
Yes, with Bruce Campbell.
Yeah. Look, this movie has entertaining moments. It has obviously, I think, one of the hottest goth chicks ever on film. But it's not very good. You can tell that there was studio interference. It has its moments where it comes to life, but I'm not feeling it at this point. This one is just more a standard ghost story that to me never really had any tension. Most of the time,
that's Artisan's fault though with the cut that did. I like both cuts. I love this. I love Blair Witch 2. I prefer it to the first one.
I used to like this one a little bit more. Like it's kind of the opposite. Blair Witch has gone up with repeated viewings, and Book of Shadows is kind of gone.
See, I watched it twice this week, both cuts, and both times I just as good a time rewatching it on the restoration as I did the first time. It is even, I don't know. Part of it I get. It's not the same, but I think it was the right call because the hate had gone and it was like known at this point. I think going the other way. Yeah. And we have that problem coming up but I think this was the right way to go.
A prequel.
Well, here's the thing. If they weren't rushing and they didn't want to hit that 1 year, get it out by Halloween, I think that they would have been able to make a better or a different film. But I think this is the right film for the time.
Well, the director too, he didn't make another movie for 19 years, and it was the Netflix original Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile, the Zac Efron Bundy movie. It took him that long. I mean, I'm sure it had to be heartbreaking coming off of this big phenomenon to then be associated with a failure a year later.
But I say this all the time. I'm the one who attaches to the weird ones.
I get it.
Friday 5. I've always just and I don't know if it's a personality quirk, but I love this one. Chris, I don't remember exactly where you.
Yeah, I forgot, Chris. I'm curious.
Yeah, that's right. I'm still here, aren't I?
Hot tag.
I've always liked this movie. I've never. Okay. I don't think I ever loved it, but I sincerely appreciated them doing something completely different and not just throwing us back in the woods with another couple of kids with a camera. because I think it would have been old hat at that point. I mean, it would have been, okay, well, we saw this already, and we have to assume it's not going to end well for them because we know it didn't end well for the last people that went in the woods looking for the Blair Witch. So here we go again. And I really did like the themes that it explored. I didn't know anything about the interference. I didn't even know it was a failure necessarily. I think I randomly was at Kmart with my father one day and the DVD was right there. And I went, ooh, this came out already. And, I think this, again, if I was 12 when the first one came out, I would have been 13. So I didn't piece it together like, oh, the reason it came out on DVD so fast is because it was a box office failure. Like, I just thought it was already out, I hadn't seen the first one in theaters, so it didn't really register to me that might be the reason why it came out. It might have already been out because I don't even think I realized it had gone in theaters. You know what I mean? Like, I think
it made money. That's the one thing. It just didn't make that kind.
It didn't make the Blair, the first one, but I mean, it didn't. It just felt like it was in and out of theaters, and then on DVD, all of a sudden, it was there. And I remember hearing that they were doing another one, and thinking to myself, oh, that's really dumb. Like, what are they going to do? Like, send another bunch of kids out into the woods with a camera again? Like, no one's going to fall for that a second time. And then they'd be like, oh no, they're doing it as a movie. Like, it's going to be like about, hysteria and the fanaticism and of the Blair Witch and what it's done. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's an interesting take. That's different. And I've seen all the cuts. There was another cut before the artisan removal cut that somebody did. It was just essentially what they labeled as a director's cut, saying that they kind of put together what they felt like was the closest to the original version they could get with what they had. Because also, it's not just about recutting the film. There are reshoots in the reshot footage in the existing version that wouldn't have been in the first version. So alternate takes of scenes or different takes or different dialogue scenes would have been present in that original version that obviously don't exist anywhere. So they have to use what's available to them for these people who are putting this kind of stuff together.
So it's the closest thing. It's really just reordering.
It's like, I think the director, someone mentioned in the chat that the director had commented, and I think he had said something about like, this is like 80% there. Like, this is pretty much as close as you're going to get without him being allowed to go in, and recut it himself and cut it the way he wanted to himself. And that cut might be one of those cases too, where that version exists and the studio stepped in and recut it. But I think they forced him to reshoot stuff while he was still making the movie, so that version may not have even gotten to the stage where it got cut together. I don't know. But I have brought it up a few times to one of my co-hosts over at Spooky Picture Show, because he runs works with Lionsgate and the Vestron line, and I have brought it up several times. If you guys should really look into doing, finally bringing the director's cut of Blair Witch 2 to light. There's two movies that Lionsgate currently controls that I think director's cut versions might make some folks maybe turn around on them a little bit, is Blair Witch 2 and the 2006 remake of Black Christmas. Because the version of that we have, even though it's labeled as the director's cut, is not a director's cut. Glenn Morgan talked about that when we interviewed him, that he got a manila envelope in the mail one day with a DVD in it that was labeled Black Christmas director's cut, and that's how he found out that it existed. With Blair Witch 2, it's in the same boat, where you'd have to go in and scan some footage that wasn't initially processed in the first place, and hope that they didn't throw that shit away and they held on to it after all this time. And the one positive is that these were also made in the era where studios had kind of learned their lesson not to just throw shit away, and they kind of kept stuff. There's a lot of film material from this era that's sitting in vaults because they're like, well, what if we need it because this was when like DVD special editions were becoming a normal thing, so it wasn't unheard of for you to go back and do a director's cut or you know what I mean? So they became pack rats. So thankfully, hopefully that means that the footage that wasn't used is still around, and that someone can give him the capabilities to kind of put his cut back together. But as the movie stands now, I think it's fine. It does kind of suffer from the studio interference with the flash cuts and the fucking industrial metal music they kind of pepper throughout the movie that you can sort of tell was a studio edgy decision to be edgy.
It comes off nostalgic to me now though. It's so 2000s now.
I get that, but that doesn't benefit the movie.
It fits the time.
That absolutely benefits the movie if you get nostalgia feelings while watching it. Yeah,
It's
well,
not-
that's
what if you put
benefiting it.
Marilyn Manson in The Witch?
Boy, I
Does
really
that
missed
work?
this.
Marilyn Manson in The Witch. I love Marilyn Manson, one of my favorites of all time. You put that
You
music in
would.
The Witch, it's kind of dumb. Sorry.
Anyway, like I
Well-
was saying, it does sort of have like this weird time capsule-esque piece to it, that does sort of plant it in that early 2000s era. And whether that's a good or a bad thing for some people, I won't say. But for me, it doesn't hurt it. It doesn't make me fault the movie. It just reminds me like this is that time frame, that this sort of came out in. And yeah, I mean, I still like it. I've never hated it. I thought the concept they had for the DVD was cool, where like there were shots they manipulated,
Yeah.
so you could go back and rewatch the movie and see that things were intentionally moved around. My dumbass thought they were continuity errors. You know what I mean? Because I had no clue. Like, the tombstone says one thing, then it says something else. I'm like, oh, they didn't know what tombstone they were using. Then there's a little feature on the DVD that explains, oh no, this was on purpose. It was also one of the first DVDs I ever bought. I think it's the only one that I remember buying that was dual format. There was a DVD on one side and a CD on the other, and it was I hated it. I hated
The soundtrack. Yeah, I
it was
remember that.
well. I didn't hate the sound. I just hated double-sided discs, and I still do. And thank God they don't do those anymore. But every movie I had that was on a double-sided disc, I would rebuy it if it came out as a single-sided one. I every single one of them I did. If I did not like double-sided discs at all, and this was no exception. And because I don't know. But I did rip the soundtrack to my iTunes library when I could, and that's
a thing of the 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah.
I meant to mention it a little bit earlier, and we're obviously not going to run down all the other found footage stuff of the time, but St. Francisville Experiment, if you haven't seen it, came out at around the same time as Blair Witch, so not a knockoff and well worth your time if you
100% a knockoff, but that's a discussion for another show. I think we should handle some of the knockoffs.
Okay, but it came out before. I believe it was actually
No, it came out after. Last Broadcast came out before.
Well, yeah, we'll get into it. Let's save that discussion because we'll go deeper. But
yeah, I think.
But see St. Francisville Experiment. I think it's quite good.
There is a HD master of that now too. Just
oh, I did not know that. Okay,
yeah,
sweet.
Which, speaking of HD masters, it is criminal that it like you're talking about like the director's cut. We don't even have the regular theatrical cut on an American Region 1 DVD.
Blu-ray.
Thank you. Blu-ray.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, we could, and we probably will at some point. I was really surprised that we didn't get one when the third movie came out.
Right. We have friggin' American Psycho 2 on Blu-ray from Lionsgate, but they couldn't bother with Blair Witch 2. Yeah. I was like, oh, we're finally going to get it. If they're putting American Psycho 2 out.
My thought process with the delays on this one, and my hope is that like their plan is to do that director's cut restoration, and it's just because it's so infamously wide known, and Lionsgate is so not the studio that Artisan was. So like they could just be like this, and again, like this is pure speculation. I'm not confirming anything. There could just be this plan in motion of, okay, we want to do this, but time is a problem, money's a problem, and finding this stuff might be a problem. While a lot of these studios kept things of that era, they didn't necessarily keep great track of them, and know where everything is. So that's another issue that we certainly run into in the past with some films where like, oh yeah, we have everything for it. We've got 30 plus warehouses that we store all this stuff in. And for some reason, the first 5 reels of this film ended up in warehouse B and the other 5 ended up in warehouse Z. And at some point in time, warehouse Z shipped them to warehouse A, and now warehouse A can't find them. So, it's weird how things get moved around and kind of get shuffled and lost. They're not gone. They're just, it's like the Ark, in these places, are not the Ark. What the hell's the fucking Indiana Jones?
Yeah, I know what you meant. The warehouse.
The warehouse. It's like the Indiana Jones warehouse, where you're just going to go and you just got to hope you find what you're looking for.
It could literally have fallen behind a shelf.
Yeah, I mean, the negative of Texas Chainsaw Massacre was found wrapped in a brown paper bag in a New Line cinema vault. Like that. was just chilling on a shelf for 30 years when Don May just randomly found it looking for something else.
Yeah.
So, you know,
he was a happy man at that moment, I'm sure.
he was. A lot of people should be very happy that got found. But I mean, that's my thing though, is like this stuff, you know, and it made sense. New Line was the theatrical distribution company for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so it made perfect sense that that's probably where the negative, you know, sat for all that time. But no one ever thought to go, hey, has anyone ever asked them if they still have it or where it is? But and up until they were looking for, I think it was for a laser disc or something, I can't remember. But regardless, you know, the stuff for Blair Witch 2 is, you know, maybe that's the reason we don't have a Blu-ray yet. Maybe that they're just waiting to put that version together, or maybe they just don't care. I really don't know.
I at this point though, it's like it has a cult following. There's fans of the film. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's different than the, you know, the amount of the first one, but I don't know.
It'll sell. I mean, I have that Spanish set that comes in like the VHS box, which was kind of cool. And that's how I own Book of Shadows.
I know people who hate this movie that would still buy it if a Blu-ray came out. Like they would.
That's horror collectors in general.
Yeah. Well, these are like Blair Witch fans are a different breed of horror fan because they're, you know, I've always told people with me, you know, being a Day of the Dead fan, like I always felt like I was cut from a different cloth, you know, than other Romero or other horror fans that weren't as into it as I was, because you know, we spend all this time defending it and telling people how great it is, and it's taken 40 years, but everyone's finally kind of seems like they're coming around to it. Blair Witch still hasn't had that moment for everyone, you know, all the people that are still pissed off to come back around. So those Blair Witch fans are still reminding people how amazing this movie is every chance they get, and defending it and not in trying to, like, you know, say like, oh, you know, it's what the greatest horror film ever, you know, whatnot. So Book of Shadows is like, you know, it's the bastard stepchild. Like it's the movie they'd like to forget ever existed. So they vehemently hate this film, but I could promise you if a Blu-ray came out, they would still buy it just to say, okay, well, I have it. So I don't, you know, shut up. Now I've got it, you know?
And yeah, so I guess we can move on to our next film, which we gotta rate it, don't we?
Chris, what do you give it? Out of 5.
I know. I'm like probably a 3.5 is where I'm kind of leaning towards. I mean, it is a step down from the first one. It's obviously not scary in that sense at all. It's more interesting conceptually than it is necessarily execution wise.
Yes.
But I still really enjoy it. I have a lot of fun with it. I think there's a lot of great stuff in it. I would love to see the version of it that the director had originally intended, because I do think that there was a much, much better film in there than what we ended up with. And not that what we ended up with was terrible. It's just, it's one of those movies, like, you watch it and you go, this was made by a committee. There were multiple people involved with the decision makings before this made it to screens, on what was going to be on the screen. And it shows, and movies like that kind of bother me, because it's like, you're not watching someone's art or, you know, their filmmaking skills. You're watching a product unfold on screen. And that's what that kind of felt like in some aspects, is this was a product already to Artisan, and they were trying to push that product. And they didn't have faith in the audience being smart enough to put stuff together, so they dumbed it down to the point where it almost becomes comical. But even with all that said, I still really like the movie the way it is, and I love the director's cut that they put together. I thought that was that would be the version I tell people to watch before watching the theatrical. Like, watch that one. It's closer to what the guy who made it actually wanted. I wish that was more widely available, but, you know, whatever. It's out there.
Well, I will give to the director's cut 2.5, for the theatrical cut 1.5.
Wow. All right, I'm gonna read Orcs before I rate it. If you're born between 1970 and 1995, I can't understand how you would dislike Blair Witch 2. I don't know exactly what you mean, Orc, but I'm going to agree with you, because I'm giving it a 5. I fucking love Blair Witch 2. It is my favorite of the series, of the franchise, of any of the stuff.
Wow.
I love Blair Witch too. Again, I established I like the weird ones of the bunch. This one is the one that marches to its own drum. I like it. I love everything about it. I am a 5.
Okay. Well, there we go. All opinions have been represented on that one here. So, all right. So 16 years, which is really wild when you think about it, because I mean, I will say, I don't think Book of Shadows was so bad that they wouldn't try and milk the name a little bit more, but 16 years in between. And after Blair Witch 2, I would have thought they would have gotten that prequel made. Because again, you have two.
That was a franchise killer. I get why we didn't get anything for a long time. Like it didn't. Yeah, they were smart to lay off of it. But you're kind of jumping ahead. Like this one, we got to talk about the marketing on this one also.
Okay,
because they attempted something different that hadn't been done also with this in a different way.
It was a really stupid move. I'm sorry, but it was very dumb.
All right, Chris wasn't a fan of it, and
well, it's not that I wasn't a fan of it, Todd. I mean, there were people asking what happened to that Woods movie. Like they didn't know that it was Blair Witch the whole time. It confused everybody. Like, you know, I get the point. Like, oh, let's surprise everyone. But like, you spend months advertising a movie called The Woods, and then at 0 hour go, oh, it's Blair Witch. Yeah, all it makes everyone go is, well, wait a minute, what happened to that movie in the woods? Like, they made a third Blair Witch? Like, it confused everybody.
It was less than 2 months that it was revealed before release. That it was revealed as a Blair Witch movie.
Yeah, like weird.
I mean, it feels like something that would have benefited from heavy advertising throughout the year that it was coming, you know, teasers, you know, footage of people talking about the original movie and what an impact it had on their life. It does feel like they kind of fumbled the ball on this one. I mean, I still firmly believe that, you know, maybe trying your hand at that prequel would have worked, but especially by this point, I guess in 2000, I can understand we were just getting away from the Scream wave and they probably just didn't see money in a period piece. But certainly by 2016, you would think Ellie Kedward, let's tell that story. Rustin Parr,
yeah, but no, see, the problem with that is 2016. No, we're going to do a reboot. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to go and do a story that people don't remember. And this is a reboot through and through. I mean, it's Blair Witch again looking for Heather. I mean,
yeah, it's the Hollywood version of Blair Witch. This is everything that the first film
tried not to do.
Exactly. And this one does it like in spades, like, you know, everything down from showing the witch who evidently was a person in a costume and was not CG, but I'm like, okay, that's great and everything like that. But what's in the movie is CGI. You can tell by looking at that it's been slathered with CGI. You know, and I saw this, I think it was opening night. I'm pretty positive I went opening night because I was very excited that they were doing it.
I remember you being very angry.
And I wasn't angry more than I was just like, wow, this didn't need to be found footage. It made no sense that they made it a found footage movie again, because this falls into that category of if you have one element in a found footage movie that doesn't work, the whole thing unravels. Well, I don't know what kind of microphones they had on these cameras, but they got the best studio sounding sound effects for the lightning and the rain and everything, you know, going crazy in the most wonderful sound mix. You could hear everyone's dialogue nice and crisp and clear. And I'm like, they're shooting on mini DV cams. As soon as the thunder hit, these cameras would crackle, like the audio would get distorted. There should be some fucking, like, you know, the rain hitting the microphone, and it should be hard to hear what they're saying at points. Like, it would have really added to the tension in some ways. And instead, it's this kind of Hollywood produced sound mix, and it just pulls you right out of
Dolby Atmos sound mix too.
Yeah,
it's just like the whole great on my system, but I was
the found footage. You know, if you're gonna go that route and give it a professional sound mix, ditch the found footage angle and just make it, do what they did with the second one, throw some parts where you have, them shooting it on the camera, but make the rest. It felt like a movie and like a real movie. It didn't feel found footage through a majority of it because of the way it looked and the way it sounded. So,
and at the end, when they're standing in the corner, who's shooting them? You're seeing like each of them, like someone's shooting them. Are they holding the camera like this? I was trying to figure it out watching. I was like, this doesn't make sense. Who's shooting them?
I think the impression you're supposed to be getting is the witch is shooting them at that point. I don't know. I left the theater not happy about it. I was not overly impressed with it. I'm like, this feels like a Hollywood remake of the first movie, and it does everything less effectively, so much to the point where like it became mundane. And then I saw it again at the drive-in in the middle of the woods, where a movie like this should kill, like in be gangbusters, but it was just as flat. It was just as like, okay, yep, this isn't any better on the second viewing. This isn't any better in the woods, where a movie like that should work perfectly. I saw actually Blair Witch in the same drive-in during COVID and thought, my God, I'm watching this movie in the middle of the woods. What the fuck? What's wrong with you? Why are you doing this to yourself? And then the third one, I was like, oh yeah, it's the Hollywood version. It's just, yeah, it's not it. And I've watched it a couple times because this is one that the fans of the first one seem to really enjoy. And I have a lot of folks who are fans of the first and friends that really champion this one. And I'm like, yeah, no, not quite it. But I'm one of I don't hate the second one, and they do. So I mean, I guess that's where the differential is.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a challenge going forward with it. I mean, I think again, being a period piece, the found footage, you don't have to worry about that. You can just tell a separate story. I saw this one, and I suspected that it was going to have issues connecting with people, and obviously it did. Adam Wingard, obviously a good director, but it was just it didn't really work. I will give the movie this much. I think the last 30 minutes or so does manage some tension, but it's not god awful. It's just 16 years for this, really, like that. Like,
yeah, just redoing the same movie with better technology. It just,
but I mean, that's what they were doing at the time, though, with a lot of the stuff, though. So
but I didn't
another one product of its time.
Like the brother looking for her, because he would have been 4, so he would have barely have even remembered her. Like they could have done a little, like make me feel something. Like I fully expected going into this that this was going to be much more theatrical, special effects, what have you. I accepted that going in. I knew that would be a problem going in, but I tried to really judge it for what it was. And as it stands, I will give it this much. Like towards the last, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, like I was kind of into it, but it's just, it's like they kind of beat you to death, beat the concept to death, and it's 16 years. You should be a little more hungry at that point. So.
Yeah, it was too much, and it was too heavy-handed, and again, it was too polished. Like I feel like the word "too" just describes it was too everything. Like there was the subtlety and the sort of like suggestions of the first one implied. This one shows you and then beats you over the fucking head with it over and over and over again. Like nothing in this movie is implied, nothing suggested. You see everything, you hear everything, you see the fucking witch, and she looks goofy as hell. They based her off that McFarlane statue that he made. And I'm like, this is something that like, and that was another thing that was crazy too. Like, Todd McFarlane has the movie Maniacs line, and he does a Blair Witch figure, and all of a sudden to everyone in their that's the Blair Witch, and then like they throw something that looks very similar into the movie. I'm like, okay, well that's
at least they made it canon.
I suppose, but I just remember thinking, oh, that's the McFarlane figure. That's kind of dumb because, I think even when they were tasked to make the figure, they were kind of like, well, what do we do? Because like this thing isn't in the movie, and there's no pictures, there's nothing, and I think they just made something up. on the fly. They probably had like another design for like a, an old lady hag or something, and stuck some branches in and said, there's the Blair Witch. And there's your, we got the license for the figure, so let's do it. But I just, this wasn't it.
They should have just made a Heather figure with snotty action, and it would have been dope.
That could have been fun. Yeah. Or just like a camera action figure. It's not even a person, it's just a camera.
You squeeze the doll and the snot just comes out of her.
Did
you know originally it was 3 males in the script? Heather was something that kind of just evolved over time, but it was actually 3 dudes, which kind of interesting. But
so I think we're all kind of in agreement on this one, the Blair Witch.
I think we're pretty close. I don't think some people list it as one of the worst sequels ever made, and I'm not quite like that level on it.
Yeah, I'm not there on it. No.
Yeah, it's a well-made film. I mean, as Chris was bitching about the sound, it does have a great sound design. It doesn't match what it should be, but it is, the Atmos sounded great and worked. But Chris's argument is it shouldn't sound that good, and he's correct.
Yeah.
Like that movie, the Outwaters. Did you guys see that one?
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
I mean, again, saw it in the theater, sound mix, and that was one of the things that they talked about, because 2 of the filmmakers were there. I think it was the producer, maybe the writer or the director, I can't remember, but they talked about how great the sound mix was, and they weren't wrong. But I'm like, this is found footage; it shouldn't sound this good. It just shouldn't, and here we are.
Chris, I watched a theory video that the dudes were taking Heather out there to kill her. Okay, well, hey,
I'd watch that movie too.
With Heather, I guess you could make that work. I'll have to watch. You'll have to link me that, Chris.
I'd like to see that one too. But yeah, I don't really have much to say on this one. I think you guys nailed it.
Well, it's a good way to segue off of. Number 1, is Blair Witch at this point dead?
Well, if we're altering it off of it, Dan,
don't we have to rate it first?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dan's
who's hosting this fucking show, Dan?
That's twice. Jeez.
Well, I can rate it first. This is a weird one because I don't think the last 20-30 minutes is bad, but I'll give it a 2. A generous 2.
All right, Chris.
My 2 is not as generous. I give it a 2 as well, and that's just because there's some stuff in it that's fine. It's not, like I said, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's certainly not the worst sequel I've ever seen. I wouldn't say that. It seems like the most pointless.
It's a pointless. There's no need for it. That's the thing.
It's the most, because I can respect Blair Witch 2 for attempting to do something very different. And I can appreciate that ingenuity, and and again, feel sympathy for studio interference, and which was very prevalent at the time. So that one gets more of a pass than this one does. That was pretty much made without the studio stepping in and the filmmakers being allowed to do what they wanted to do. And what they did was make a kind of hollow version of the first movie.
Yeah. I think I'm probably going to be the highest here. I'm going to give it a 2.5. I don't think it's a badly made film. It doesn't. It's just the same thing again. It's just a case of that. So, I mean, if you're a big fan of the first one, I can get why you'd like this one. So I don't think we have many big fans of this one in the chat, it seems, but
no, everybody's just kind of indifferent, I find, with this, but
I know Dan's
answer. What if the Blair Witch wrapped?
I know there's the hip hop witch, but we're not going to go into that. But real quick, before we go to the future of the franchise, which I can tell Dan is antsing to talk about, quick, let's just talk about the Blair Witch documentary, which we've talked a little bit throughout. But I'm just going to say this: see it. It is great. It's 2.5 hours. You don't have any of the cast, which I did notice, but it's like all the filmmakers. It really takes you from the concept to the execution to the sequels, or to
the dinner table arguing points, like where you can see where this movie might have gone at one point. I would give this documentary 5 stars. years. Like
Yeah.
it is very, very good to see the creative process. You see them buying props at Home Depot. Like they filmed all of this. Like it's so cool, and I very highly recommend you check out the doc.
Yeah, there isn't really much discussion on this one other than our highest recommendation. Yeah, I'd be a 5
Yeah.
on this one too.
Yeah,
Chris, if you haven't seen
all
it,
the
check it
info.
out. This thing is fantastic. I definitely, if you're a fan,
Yeah.
and if you have the second sight set and you haven't watched it yet, watch this immediately.
Yeah, I do want to champion that transfer on the second site too, because
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, this was one of those situations where, you know, I know part of Blair Witch was shot on film, so you know, I kind of knew, okay, we're going to get like a, you know, we'll get it. Well, that will look really good. But you know, it being shot on VHS, it's going to look as good as it ever did on the last Blu-ray. That footage, at least, and that's like, you know, I don't know, 60% of the movie. And then, oh boy, was I wrong. Because you know, you didn't know, I don't think anybody knew how it was initially transferred in the first place, and to find out that they basically projected it on a screen in a theater with a film camera in front of it, shot it on film that way, took that negative, and that's what they used to make prints and everything off of. So it was one generation removed from the original master to begin with, and this was the first time they actually went back to those original tapes, scanned them professionally and properly, and were able to put them, you know, in the movie the way they intended to be in the first place. And it's a huge difference. I mean,
it totally is night and day. Like,
Yeah.
wasn't the other version also just off the film print too? So
basically,
like,
they transferred it from the film. I mean, in some ways, in a movie like Blair Witch, that might benefit it because it's, you know, it's a little more grimier looking, it's a little, you know, murkier and less clean.
But for a documentary, it should look like what it was shot. So this is
exactly
actually,
yeah. So this either version works, but the second site release to
Looks
me
great.
is the best way to watch the film. So
absolutely
Agreed.
So, future of the
Um,
franchise, Chris, where do you think we should go from here?
I don't think there is a franchise in this, honestly. I really don't. I never had. Even like again, I can't shit on 2. They did something different, but the last one, I mean, what else are they going to do from here? I mean, like they tried something different, it didn't work for people or audiences. They tried doing the same thing, it didn't work. I mean, again, the first one's lightning in a bottle, and people use that phrase often for certain titles. You know, and sometimes I think it's true, sometimes I think they're just trying to be, you know, I don't know, purists. But in Blair Witch's case, I really don't think that this was a franchisable property. This really needed and felt like it was, you know, kind of had to be a one and done. It wasn't like a Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street or, you know, that was like sequel potential written all over it. Because I mean, like, what more can you do than what the first one did? And I'm really, other than like building on that mythology, maybe, like, you know, I know Dan keeps throwing around this prequel idea that someone's talking, you know,
But we already have the witch now. It's pointless now. They even touch on that in the documentary.
no, I know that, but I'm
Well,
saying like that would be
doesn't-
the only thing I think I'd be kind of interested in, is like if they did something with like the Rustin Parr story, like, you know, and you know, do something set in like the 40s or 50s, and like it'd be like a movie where it's like a sort of a you know, a fake biopic of Rustin Parr. I think that could be kind of interesting, but like that's that's really the only piece of it that I'd be like, okay, if they did that, I'd see it. But anything else at this point, I'm just like, yeah, it's just going to be either the same thing or something else that isn't going to work. It's just, it's not a franchisable property.
There's stuff in the universe they could play. They could make the Burkittsville 7, and you don't have to just focus on the Blair Witch. It's just that, you know, they could take stories like the stuff Dan wants.
Well, all of the smart ideas are prequels for me. The only thing, and I don't want this, but I could see them doing something, because you can't just go back to the woods and go look for Heather or that would be dumb, and that's not going to work. Maybe they go some sort of new nightmare thing where it affects these actors in their real lives. I could see them doing that. I don't really want it, but maybe that's the only thing I could see as a sort of sequel, a meta sequel. Tell me the Rustin Parr story. Tell me the Ellie Kedward story. Rustin Parr / Burkittsville 7. Like that, to me, you could do those, take a shot at it. Hopefully they're good. But no, I don't see any future either with a sequel. They will remake it at some point because that's just what everybody
Well,
does.
I think that's
but-
what 2016 was.
I was gonna
And
say
there's
they kind
been
of already did.
well,
Yeah,
but
there's-
it's not really a remake. It's a sequel.
It doesn't matter. That's
yeah.
how they'd remake it, and
Yeah.
that's and
Yeah.
it was lukewarm and it wasn't received well.
Estimated budget of $5 million, gross $20 million in the US, 45 worldwide. They're
Yes,
in no
that's-
rush to touch this property
Yeah.
again. That's 2 flop sequels. Hollywood will learn its lesson, and they probably have now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be looking at a remake, or I think what we'll probably see in the future for, again, if they're going to go that route, is maybe like a Rustin Parr story, Ellie Kedward thing. That'd be kind of cool, but
Right.
or
here.
it's just they just reissue the first one for an anniversary for a Fathom event thing every now and again, you know.
Yeah. So like Slasher says, so in universe, but not involving the witch, basically. Yeah, that's I think if you want to tell, there's stories to be told, but I think you could focus on Blair Burkittsville and not necessarily the witch. There's other stuff that's interesting. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm fine with just the 2. I don't think we needed that last one at all.
I as far as legacies go, there really, if there was nothing else after the first one, that would have been the way. It's not.
I'm going to strongly disagree with that because I love the second one, but I get it.
Well, I would have liked the second one if it existed as another film. I don't think it needed the Blair Witch 2 aspect of it, and I think you could probably agree with me on that if it was about.
Yeah, it didn't need to be about. It could be any witch. Anything.
Yeah, it could be anything. And I have to echo. I mean, it's the first one was a one and done, and that's how they should have left it, and that's how it should have stayed. It's there's movies that like I wish got sequels, like Nightbreed and both Trick or Treats.
Yeah,
I would have loved to have seen Sammy Kerr get another movie, and I know that they keep saying that the actual Trick or Treat is still happening, and it's going to happen eventually. But and one of these days it might, but it might get, that one might just get to the point where it gets so far from the first one
Sam is still all over Halloween.
He's everywhere, but
exactly. So why do you need another movie that could screw up that legacy of a perfect film? And most
people will go and see it. I think
people would go see it if they did a one night only screening of the original again too.
I think Mike Dougherty is very close to that character in that mythology. He's not going to. I think that's why we've waited. It's taken so long. I mean, he very easily, I'm sure, had plenty of ideas he could have thrown out there for a Trick or Treat. We could have had a Saw type of franchise on our hands with that film if he had just been like, fuck it, do what you want, put Sam in what we'll do. We'll do one every year, and we'll just do Sam, have Sam pop up. I think the reason it's taken so long is because he does care about it so much, and he has to be the one to pull the trigger. He's just kind of been biding his time for those good ideas, those great ideas to come to light. Because if we get a part 2, I'll be excited, and I'll see it, of course. And I don't think it's going to hurt the first one. It's one I would like to see more of, but when it comes to something like this with Blair Witch, like this was not, I didn't see the first one and immediately go, oh my God, I want to know what happens after this. I want to know what happens next. Like what, it was all kind of out there for you. Like they had done such a great job of building up what had transpired around the film in, quote, real life. You really didn't have any questions when part 1 was over, other than, was it real or was it not real? That was it. But that was on their marketing side of things. Like you didn't need to know what happened to Heather and Josh and Mike. They were dead. Like we got it. They died. They were never seen again. Missing in the woods, dead forever. Goodbye.
The end.
Yeah. I had a great time revisiting everything, even the last one. I didn't remember it at all. I saw it the once and kind of left it there, and not a rush to watch that last one again. But I'll definitely watch the first 2 again in my lifetime. So
yeah, I will too. I mean, it's I think I watched the first one almost every October. It's an annual October viewing. That Halloween party has a lot of great, that experience was a great memory that's certainly attached to it and helps fuel that tradition. But it's more so, it feels very October. I mean, it was shot supposedly they were in October, in the woods in October, and it's perfect for that time of the year. It's cold and it's lots of fall, lots of leaves on the ground, dead. It really puts you in the fall mood. So it's one of those. It goes in my October stack every year, and it's usually towards the end of October when the nights are really getting short or longer, and the days are getting shorter, and it's getting much colder out, and it feels like you could meet the Blair Witch if you go outside. So
yes,
Dad, you don't get to shit on Blair Witch 2, then talk about the hot goth girl. Do not disrespect the film and then be all on Tim Director's sack. Dad, shut up. You're just a pain in my ass. I was going to say, yeah, I know you do. I forgot what I was going to say now, damn it.
He's blinded by rage.
Old age.
Maybe both. I don't know.
But Chris, tell them where they can check you out if they would like to. Chris McGibbon of the Spooky Picture Show.
I was going to say, I'm the only Chris here. Why is my full name being used?
Yeah.
You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple, Amazon. I think they're still a thing, right, with podcasts. I know one of them dropped off. I think it was Google Podcasts. Yeah, they're gone. Yeah, they're dead. But yeah, we pretty much upload everywhere. The only place we don't have a presence in is on YouTube, and that's something we've been toying with for the last year. So it might be something that we explore. But
for now, you can only see his pretty face here.
Yeah. We do we normally do 2 shows a month, but we've now made a executive decision that because it's been a few episodes where all 5 hosts have come on one show. Usually it's 4 and 4, but when we do the episodes where all 5 of us are together, we just do 1 episode that month. So sometimes it's twice, sometimes it's once. It just depends on who's on it.
So just follow them on Spotify and you don't have to worry about it.
It's true. Yeah. Our latest episode was on talking all about our physical media memories. That was a fun one to do. We had a lot of fun stories on that one. And then the next one coming up is our Horror Smackdown year 1985 edition. We did 1980 earlier in the year, and now we're tackling 1985, and none of us want to do it because there's a lot of great movies.
Yeah, 85. Are you going to do 82 next? And that's geez.
No, we're doing anniversaries this year. So 80 was 45th. This will be 40th. And then I think we're doing 1990 after that. And then I think we're going as far as 95. And then we're going to stop because we don't want to remind ourselves that 2005 was 20 years ago. So we figured like we could still say 90s and be like, oh, it's 20 something years ago and still feel good about ourselves.
It's the late 1900s now, Chris.
Yeah, I know. I can't even tell you how much you just want to shrivel up and curl into a ball when a kid asks you what it was like to be alive during the 1900s, and you're just like, you don't know how to respond to that because you realize
you just tell them, well, you know what, the AI is going to kill you long before make it to my age.
Well,
so
anyone 20 and up was born in the year 2005. So like anyone who's 25 was born in 2000. So you're just like, holy shit! Like there's adults that are closer to my age than I was when I was alive that year, than you are right now. Like it's insane, and time just does not slow down for anybody. So anyway, so we made an executive decision that we weren't going to jump out of the 90s just so we could still feel good about ourselves. So but yeah, there's so that's some of our shows we have coming up planned. There's some other stuff peppered throughout the year that we're going to do too. So but yeah, we're
and I don't think we've pissed them off enough to not come back, hopefully.
Me?
Yeah.
It depends.
Yeah,
it was a lot less heated than the last time, I guess.
I just let you two go at it. I mean, like, I figured you two could cover enough.
Chat loves it. If I'd have yelled at Dad, at least
more violent.
They think something was wrong.
Chris, do you have anything else to tease coming up? Any projects you're working on? Anything you want to promote outside of the podcast? You can, anyways.
Well, we're doing some screenings this summer. If you're in the New England area, we're screening Fright Night on June 15th. We're doing Day of the Dead on July 12th. We just officially got added to the 40th anniversary list on the Day of the Dead 40th anniversary website. So
that's awesome.
we're really proud to be in some great company. A lot of theaters are booking that one for screenings this year. So if you're not local in Massachusetts or in New England, check the day of the, I think it's day40th.com. You can check and see if there's going to be any screenings of it in your area. From what I saw, the list was pretty extensive. A lot of because Dawn of the Dead came out back in theaters for a minute and made a decent chunk of change. So a lot of those theaters are booking Day of the Dead for the and bringing it back out. So go support that.
Well, they should have made that one 3D too.
And then we've also got Return of the Living Dead in August that we're doing. I'm excited about that.
Oh, Chris, what theater are you talking about?
We work with Cinema Salem. So Cinema Salem and the Somerville Theater are our two home theaters, but for these events we're working with Cinema Salem. So if you're we've got one more in November that we haven't officially booked yet, but it was originally booked for June for Pride Month. That's all I'll say about what's going to be playing in November. It was blocked. And then I'm working on some stuff with Red Shirt Pictures. So some stuff's already been announced. Obviously, I think all of it's been announced. Actually, I don't think Fright Night 2 is a mystery anymore for anybody. So I'm getting to work on that, which is really exciting. I actually submitted the cover art for that 3 weeks ago. So finally finalized and everything. So
and let me ask, was that like the 300th time you've made a Fright Night 2 cover at this point?
No, because I've always just used the same art, and you can't vary it as much as people think. But the original
I already have the cover there.
Well, the original artist surfaced, and she still had the painting, so we got a really nice fresh scan of it, and there was some detail that you can't see in the other scans that we find that are coming out now. So
cool.
That'll be really nice. And it's going to be like a there's going to be options for the artwork too. I'll just say that.
I'm guessing the white one and the other one.
He went, well, you figure he went hog wild for Trick or Treat, and Fright Night 2 is, I love Trick or Treat, but Fright Night 2 is probably a much bigger title than Trick or Treat was. So I think that we're going to expect this to have a pretty similar rollout when we start announcing stuff. But
they've already said it's similar type packaging too.
Yes, yeah.
I know Prom Night 2 was also said that.
Prom Night 2 is getting that treatment as well. I don't know what the plan is for 3 and 4. And Hunter's Blood, I think, is almost done.
Finally, there hasn't even been a DVD of that one.
Yep. And then I know Savini leaked that Night 90 is coming out in a director's cut. I worked on that.
You sneak peeked the clip.
I mean, it's not I think that's all I got. I don't think there's anything else, but I think that's enough.
That's a full slate. So
on top of all that, I work a full-time job Monday through Friday. So I mean, I got plenty to do.
And you made time for us. I appreciate that, Chris.
I did. I'm getting
we appreciate it.
I normally play video games with my podcast mates tonight, and they're yelling at me because I'm not there. So I'm like, whatever. Look it over.
Well, we're wrapping right now. Dan.
All right, guys. Be sure to tune in next week. We got The Ritual. We've got Dangerous Animals, which I'm very curious to check out, and a lot of other stuff. Also, keep an eye on Kruger. He's got his big match coming up July 11th, going for the Supreme Violence title against Carnage. That is going to be a bloodbath, and we know Kruger's going to come out on top. So check that out. And that's all I got.
All right.
So, Chad, I do have one question before we wrap up, though.
Yes.
I didn't watch the Sinners episode, but was Dan as racist as he normally is when covering that movie?
Wow. What the fuck? I've not even talked to you about Sinners. I gave that a very good review.
I believe you gave it a 5, didn't you?
It was either a 4.5 or a 5.
Oh, I gave it a 5.
See, he can't. Yeah, he's racist. He can't remember.
Damn.
He was rooting for the guys at the end that showed up.
Yeah,
but
Jesus. Christ. Wow.
All right.
Him with that damn hat and has the pointy thing underneath.
There's no point on the hat. Thank you, and it's brown.
I loved Sinners. It would have gotten a 5 for me too. So
yeah, it's great.
Okay.
It's my favorite of the year so far.
Sweet. Yeah, we'll have to. Did you see Bring Her Back yet?
No, I have not seen that yet. I've heard. I am a Fangoria subscriber, which I won't plug Fangoria too much because I don't think they need it. But if you are not a Fangoria subscriber, I highly recommend it. For no other reason that there's a private Fangoria subscriber community you can only go into if you are an active subscriber, and in that community we do monthly town halls, which are awesome because you get to hang out with the Fangoria crew and a bunch of other like-minded horror fans, and one of the benefits of doing those every month is that you're literally interacting with a lot of the community members that are in that group once a month. So everyone is very civil and actually has conversations with each other. Like nobody argues about anything in that group. They just talk about their opinions. It's wonderful. It's like this corner of Facebook that like people just don't think actually really exists. Like we have this little unicorn universe.
Then why are you telling me and Dan? Do you want us to subscribe and be in that universe? Are you like thinking this out?
You would be removed almost instantly, so I'm not worried about it. But my point of that is that we had a town hall, and everyone who had seen Bring Her Back had pretty much told everyone who hadn't seen it, do not make any social plans when the movie is over because you're not going to want to do anything. One of the writers said she had made dinner plans and she actually canceled them because all she wanted to do was go home and stare at a wall and decompress. So considering how tumultuous 2025 has been, I don't need a 2-hour movie that's going to remind me. So I'm kind of just biding my time on seeing that one. But I will see it eventually.
Wallow in the pain. Wow.
I will see it eventually, but I did see Sinners. I actually saw it twice in theaters. I do not remember the last time I went and felt compelled to see a movie a second time in theaters. And I've never done this before, never in my life, because why would I, but I pre-ordered it digitally. I don't know why I did. It's not like it's not going to sell out anywhere. But the moment it was available last night at midnight, I watched it again.
Yeah. Does it do the IMAX ratio on the digital?
It does.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
It does.
Good to know. All right. Well, on that note, go watch Sinners if you haven't, available on digital. Chris, say goodnight.
Good night. Again.
Dan?
Good night.
All right. Money's on the dresser.